Hi, I'm Gracie.
And I'm Callum. Both of our siblings died, so we decided to do what everyone seems to be doing right now and make a podcast about it.
We talk about death, grief, and all the weird stuff that nobody warns you about.
It's not all heavy. There will be a lot of laughter, some swearing, but be warned, there will be the occasional emotional gut punch.
We chat to people who've experienced grief too, not always sibling grief, but always someone with an incredible story.
Should we get on with it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So, today's guest is Amber Jeffrey. When her mum Susan died in 2016, Amber was just 19. A few years later, on what she calls a chaotic trip to Morocco, she came up with the Grief Gang, now a podcast, community, and a space for honest conversations about grief. Her work has helped so many people feel less alone, myself included, and we're so glad that she's here with us today. Hi, Amber.
Hello, Amber.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah,
that was a
thank you.
lovely introduction.
Did I get it right?
Of course you did.
At least you got a mum's name right. That's the main thing, isn't
I've
it?
actually never had that. I'm thinking
Have you not?
surely someone can't butcher up Sue. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's so fair.
Or, no, yeah.
He does it to me though. He calls me Laura sometimes.
Yeah, you know, I get called Liam all
Yeah,
the time,
that's
so
sweet.
it's acceptable. I quite like it. It reminds me of him a bit, but
Totally. Yeah.
Oh,
Totally.
really?
Yeah. I always normally get Jeffries. My last name has had many
You think you can't
butchering.
mess that up?
You'd think, wouldn't you, Gracie?
Yeah, you
but no,
would.
my
Not
whole
the
life
case.
it's been my story. But it's an absolute delight to be here with you both.
so many of us know you for being behind the Grief Gang, and you've done some really incredible things with it. How does it feel turning well, one of the worst moment of your life into something that is so positive?
It's kind of hard to. It gets lost on me in some ways in terms of Grief Gang was never meant to be what it was meant to or is today in some ways, and I even feel quite icky even saying that, being like, oh, what it is today. And I still feel like now when I record the podcast, I'm still just talking to like my friends and family of like, and have like 200 listens or something. And for me, the numbers aren't not anything. It's big, but I just kind of don't think I really can grasp the magnitude of it. But I do sometimes think when I think back to 19-year-old Amber, like on that day my mum died, and I think, gosh, if someone came, like the version of me today stood in front of her and said, oh, FYI, in like 9 years' time, all this stuff will happen, I wouldn't even just be like, oh, piss off. I'd just be like, how? I'd be like, I couldn't quite quantify how I've ended up here doing this. And I was thinking about the other day and I was like, I can't deny I've lived and I'm living quite an extraordinary life in the terms of not I'm extraordinary, but in terms of just
I think you are.
what has happened in terms of like, you can't write this shit. Like it's just mental, but it's been the most mental, chaotic, fun and healing, like 9 years, or really Grief Gang, 6 years of my life. Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know what the Grief Gang is, if you were to summarise it and explain sort of what it is that you do with the Grief Gang, hit that.
It's a great question. This is the question I always get when
I'm
someone
sure.
says like, what do you do? And I'm like, how
a hard
to
question.
compartmentalise it. So I would say the Grief Gang is, yes, as you mentioned in the introduction, it consists of a podcast, a community, and now, as of 2 years ago, mentoring.
Yeah.
And it originally started as just the podcast. I just, after 3 years after my mum's death, was like, I need to brain dump. I had no idea really what a podcast was, how you orchestrate it, anything. Still really don't, to be honest. I just, pissing in the wind. And kind of just went, I've got so much on my head and my heart that I need to talk about. And I just went, and I didn't really not care, but I was like, I don't care if no one listens to it. This is for me.
Yeah.
And so I just bought this gear off Amazon, which is still my same kit today.
Is it? What an investment.
I told you I'm lazy. I don't do anything more.
Fair enough.
And I just sat there and I recorded my story from A to B and just put it out into the world. And all I expected kind of really was just my friends and family to kind of listen to it and support it. Again, I had no plan for it to be or specific goals for it. And I kind of still don't, in a way. Like, I'm not like, this is my 5-year plan with it, whatever. All the goal is just to help people in grief and for them to not feel alone, because that's what it was. And I both relate so much in terms of, I was so alone. And then when I started Grief Gang and I started to feel not so alone, just by as it started slowly building, and I was like, wow, I've only just found like a handful of people And I really feel so less alone. And I thought, gosh, imagine doing this en masse or being able to reach other people with different loss experiences, and just kind of snowballed into that. It was like my 5 to 9 outside of my 9 to 5. I went through so many job changes in that time of like that pre-COVID time. And then it presented an opportunity in September 2023 when I was made redundant from my last job, and I went, fuck it, let's give this a go and see if I can make this a full-time gig. And I thought the part I loved the most is working with people. I was like, yes, the podcast's fun, and I love it. And sort of I thought, what's the part that I love the most about just Grief Gang as a whole? And I was like, being with people and being able to connect people to each other and for them to find community. I was like, if I could provide that in some sort of smaller micro community to different people, I'd be laughing and I'd be so happy. And I ripped the Band-Aid off and I was running before I could walk. And somehow still doing it today.
And now look at you. You're like you're the grief queen. what a title. So for those listening that don't know about your story, perhaps we could take a little bit of a back step and go back to 2016 and maybe even before that. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of grief?
Yeah, totally. So my story of grief started in 2016, then very abruptly. I lost my mum, Sue, to a very sudden heart attack. She was 51 and I was 19. And even kind of like before that, I was saying, Callum, like, it's hard, and I don't know for you too, kind of like those years before your losses are kind of a bit locked away in some ways.
Fuzzy as well, I'd
totally.
say.
And I do, and there's a grief in that itself too, of kind of and there were such great years, kind of that pre-adolescent time, and all I remember is kind of the first few months before my mum's death of that. I just turned 19. And I had passed my driving license. I got my first car. I started my first big girl job at the airport because my ex-background is kind of airport. I was going in that trajectory. Like, life was going sweet. Life was going really good. I was like, wow, this is 19, okay. And I remember then my mum had her heart attack. It was just out of nowhere. Day before my dad's birthday, which I found hilarious because they were divorced, and she really didn't like my dad. So I always found it, in hindsight, I looked back and I was like, that was a definite final you, snuffing it the day after his birthday. Like, my gosh. But just completely out of nowhere, I had a phone call from an unknown number on the 24th of June. And it was one of my mum's work colleagues, and it was very chaotic. And they said, you need to call the police. And I was like, why do I need to call the police? That's to do with my mum. And long story short, finally got through, and police officer calling and said, they're traditional, are you sitting down? And I was thinking, no, that's never good. And just said, your mum's had a heart attack and she's being blue lighted to the local hospital. And I was at my partner's home at the time. And it was just that, the only way I ever describe it is that kind of, like you see in war films perhaps, and a bomb goes off near and your ears are ringing, like when you come at the club and your ears are thumping, just couldn't hear a thing, just complete straight immediate shock. And next minute I knew I'd been picked up by a police car into the hospital, and we weren't able to see her at this point, but just knew it was bad. And then they finally stabilised her as such, and they took us through the A&E ward. And again, I'd never really historically spent a lot of time in hospital, so I didn't really know what meant what. And so walking through, and it's all colour-coded, isn't it, in A&Es? And so you kind of got your blue, your yellows, and you kind of know the different triages. And I just knew we were walking towards the red zone. I was like, even though I don't know what that really means, I know red doesn't really mean good. And I just pulled back the curtain. I'm just seeing my mum there, and it was just an image that was forever ingrained of just these mass amount of people working on her body, and just having no capacity to process it. And someone was asking questions on our behalf, me and my brother, and just so much unknown. And it was and then the rooms just started to pile, like in the waiting rooms with people and our loved ones. And then as the night progressed, she did stabilise. And there was lots of discussion about kind of long-term and longevity, about, they put her into a induced coma, and sort of lots of conversation about the following week and what that might look like. So it was borderline quite hopeful. There was always something in me that just knew my mum wasn't going to survive. I just knew as soon, in that moment when I laid eyes on her in the red triage area, I just knew she's not going to survive. And I almost prepared myself for the worst. And I used to sometimes think was that me being pessimistic or not keeping hope? But I think I was just protecting myself. I just thought, prepare for the worst, and you can maybe nothing pleasantly surprises you. And then there was a meeting later on in the evening with the doctors. Again, very hopeful, lots of statistics and things as such. And we left for the night because her sisters wanted to stay with her. Me and my brother went home. And in the morning, she had another heart attack, and her body was just so weak from just the day before and going through so much. She simply didn't survive it. And it's a day that is just for you both as well, just, ingrained in your mind minute by minute. And it just moves so slowly. And just by the end, within a 24-hour time period, me and my brother, my brother is 7 years older than me. So kind of around my age now, when Mum had died, and just catapulted into this world without Mum. Our dad, he's in our lives, but he was away in the Caribbean actually burying his own mother at the time too. So we were quite literally these two children without either parents to support us. We were surrounded by so many loved ones and so many people. We cannot ever fault anyone for that. But just how I think, and that being my first immediate loss experience and it being so sudden, just completely, the splitting of the fork of my life to my peers, to my sense of self. I just overnight was like, wow, my mum just died out of nowhere. Gosh. And then doing the dance of trying to be a then still normal 19-year-old amongst your peers.
Yeah.
Or what is normal now, all these big emotions, trying, like I said earlier, I got my first big girl job at the airport. I was like trying to figure out who I was in this life. And then without Mum, I was just like, this is really uneven foundations to do this. And I did that for about 3 years of just kind of on that rockiness. And until year 3, just post, it was a really difficult time mentally, emotionally for me. And that's when I really do think my grief just came and said, enough now, like we need to talk.
Yeah.
And we did. And then Grief Gang was born.
And 3 years seems pretty good to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I even felt grief for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Obviously I did. I had my moments.
Totally.
But it then overwhelmed me. And then it was like years of being like, what do I do here? But the anniversary is approaching.
Yes,
right?
yeah, literally like 3 weeks.
Very soon. And does that ever affect you in some way? Because
it's interesting, Callum, because it's like, again, if I think back to that, if I was to go back to 19-year-old Amber and to say to her, like, yeah, in 9 years' time, and you're about 2 weeks out from your mum's anniversary, and I'm not going to sit here and say I don't think about it, but it won't paralyse you.
Yeah.
Is mental to me. I know when it comes around, and this is the tricky part of, like, and especially with people when I work with them, it's never to say, time is a healer and all that guff, but I say time is a teacher. Time is the most amazing teacher about yourself. And, having 9 years under a belt and length of time with both of you, you begin to understand yourself and what works for you and what doesn't. And so, like, I know around this time of year, it's not that, I've had 8 under my belt already, I'm fine. I know how to treat myself. I know kind of on that mum's anniversary, I just block it out. I don't do any sort of work. I let it do what I need to do with it. I know myself. I know what doesn't work. But if I was, to go back to 19-year-old Amber and say, like, there'd be a time, because before, for those first, I'd say like maybe even 5 years, June was a write-off. I would never have done this, so I'd have been a hermit. I'd been like, no. And almost in a way, sometimes that does still creep itself up, and the body keeps the score always, even before your brain even understands, like, oh, why are you behaving in this way? Your body will signal it to you. So, like, if you do feel a bit more hermity and you feel like I'm going inside, you're thinking, why am I like this? And you kind of maybe go, oh, actually, there's an anniversary there, or this time a couple of years ago was maybe when they were diagnosed or something like that. It's phenomenal, your body and the data that it keeps. And I kind of know that in myself. I'm like, oh, okay, I know if I'm getting a bit more maybe ratty and a bit irate or a bit more recluse. I'm like, what's coming up? If I haven't already, go, oh yeah, anniversary or birthday, or sometimes just like a previous milestone or a memory. Like, for example, my friend Poppy, who died, like, around this time of year kind of is very rocky in terms of there was lots of treatments and stuff around this time, and the body keeps a score. But I think I found my groove in ways of managing these dates, but I say that always with, I'm never a fool to understand that can all change.
Absolutely.
That can all change.
And you say never a fool, and you're like managing these things. Like, the way you speak about this seems like you're in control of your story and your narrative and your emotions and your moments. I imagine a lot of that has come from just, I guess, your job now. It feels weird, I imagine, to say it's your job, but speaking so openly about it. Gracie and I have both experienced, like, our siblings dying in like a fairly public limelight, and we've had to speak a lot about their deaths publicly. And I know when Gracie is speaking to her like cue sheet, her hymn sheet. I know when I'm speaking to my hymn sheet, and I know when she's about to go off piece on the hymn sheet, and when she like tones a bit down, and when she looks like she's about to cry.
Yeah.
Do you speak off your hymn sheet, or is there some things that you just can't say, that you can't speak about? Are there some things that you just can't bring yourself to remembering?
It's a great question, Callum. I'm just trying to get some tears out of me.
No, I really am not. You should be laughing a lot by this point. I feel like they're getting quite deep.
I love that, and I love that, and I love conversations like that and questions like that, because, as you say, it being my job, I think me to be able to find the language and the form of how I want to talk about, not only about grief as a whole, but mine is, by the work that I do. Through every single person that I meet and work with, I not only learn about them and grief, but I learn about myself too, and how maybe it's applicable to me. But there is, and I think there's definitely remits in with my mum, that the day she died and things around that are really painful. I think going in to see her after she had actually died, and seeing, and actually like it was the distinct memory of kind of the night before she died, kissed her goodnight, and she still had that warmth for one anyway, and just that quite motherly scent. And I remember I can see a shampoo bottle in my head right now, and I can smell it right now. And I remember that being such a comfort of thinking, oh, there she is. She's still there. And then once she died and we got in to see her, and I kissed her, and she was cold and her scent was gone. And that, for me, and the only way I ever describe it, was something of quite primal in terms of, I felt in that moment like a cub who has lost their mum, and it's that scenting, you like how a mum knows their baby, you smell of your baby. It was very primitive and very primal, and that was when like the hatch just beneath me went. And when I think back to that, I think that was very, very painful for me. And I think when I think of young Amber, and I think of, particularly in those 3 years, just how much pain I was in. And particularly in that year 3, when everything came to a head, and I was very deeply depressed and borderline suicidal. And I was, really. And I think, gosh, how desperately sad to be so sad.
Yeah.
And I look at her, and I'm so proud of her and proud of myself for getting through that. But I think, gosh, what agony to know such a loss so hard and so young. So there you go, you got it. No, it's fine.
We can pause if you want.
No, it's fine. It's good, because, as you say, it is of the work we do. We find our scripts, but it's that for me. It's not. Of course, it's painful as emotion is to go back there. It's part of my story, and I think it's being able to get to a point here where I can talk about it and be, fluent in it, whatever. I wouldn't have been able to do that without that part of Amber. So I don't look back at any of it in regret, or I go, no, I can't touch that. I can't look at it or speak about it, because it's part of me. It's part of my story. The pain is, to sit with that pain and that sorrow has led me to be able to have a very joyful life. I can never deny and say that I don't live a happy life. I do. I think I'm one of the happiest people I know. I know a lot of sad people who don't know grief, and I think, gosh, I've known pain and agony, and I can say I'm happy.
That's such a beautiful way to put it, and such an incredible mindset to have, though, as well. But you're obviously, say it's coming up to 9 years now. Your coping mechanisms from when you first lost your mum to now must have evolved with you as well. And I'm assuming the podcast and the Grief Gang itself is probably part of your coping mechanism.
Definitely.
But how would you say that that's changed your coping mechanisms, and how in that first, if you go back to kind of the first month or so, what were your immediate coping mechanisms versus how you, whatever you just thought of, say it.
Not great. Booze.
Yeah.
Cigarettes.
Yeah.
I was 19. I was a heavy smoker.
I was going to say that's a hard time anyway. So to couple that with your mum dying, that's like everything's heightened.
Where I grew up, our social setting, I mean, I think British culturally, right, especially young, we are very heavy on drink and whatnot. And I was still trying to be just a 19-year-old kid and slotting in and going to the club every weekend. So very much a lot of clubbing, a lot of booze, a lot of drink, a lot of that. Not to a point where it was a problem, but to a point where I realised, oh, actually, the way I feel right now, probably not great.
Okay.
It's not helping me in any sort of way. Every time I was crying in the club, I was like, no one's enjoying crying in the club. Crying in the club. And I was like, that's an experience, crying in the club.
I actually found it quite cathartic when I did that.
I hated every second of it, Gracie, because I'm a dance floor girly.
Okay.
So I was like, this isn't my vibe. This is not my vibe. But I'm like, I'm okay to cry. I cry every single day. For some reason, whether it's happiness or sadness,
or because you've been forced into it.
Because Callum's trying to get tears out.
Yeah, cry.
I love that. It's so great. But my outlet is to cry, whether I'm in joy, whether I'm in sorrow.
Yeah.
But so when that was coupled with drinking and whatnot, I thought, actually, no, that's probably not the best for me.
Yeah.
I can't quite distinctly remember if I was kind of like, let's dial it back a little bit. I think I did at certain points, and I kind of just had a mental note of like, let's just watch when we do drink and how we are feeling. Why are we picking up a glass of wine? Is it because we're with the girlies having a good time, or are we trying to mask something as well?
That's so powerful to think like that, because at 19... my sister was ill, but she hadn't died, and I was not on that mindset at all.
I mean, I say that to say, that was back then, but when my friend Poppy died, the day she died... To be real, I probably drank about 3 bottles of wine and didn't feel like I touched side. Sat in the bath and got pissed. Oh, it was a scene. And I woke up the next day and I genuinely did not have a hangover. I think I was in so much pain.
Your body probably thought you needed that.
I needed it. Yeah. And then again, after that, I went, okay, that's your one. Yeah. You're good there. You've shown yourself again. That's still not the way. But I thought it's so indicative, by that, Poppy died in 2023. It's by that point for me, I was for about 4-5 years into doing Grief Gang. It doesn't matter how much you do the work or know all the things, how primal your body reacts or your responses are. For me, yes, then the day after, knowing like, okay, you had your blow up there, that's your lot there, you understand, that's not the best way for you. Coping mechanisms are meant to be kind of pushed and tested, and you kind of have to try things to go, oh, actually, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's really not trying things out. But I would say, if I think back to like my mum and kind of the thing that has consistently always helped me, whether it was my mum or with the death of my friend Poppy, is the mechanism and the understanding of that we still have a bond and continuing a bond, and that we can still have a relationship. And I think after my mum died, that was the part that was so difficult in terms of the finiteness of that she is no longer here and that we no longer have a relationship. And of course, that is, factually correct to some degree. But it was when I started the work with Grief Gang and started to understand the thing about kind of continuing bonds and what it means to still have a relationship with them, that actually made it a bit more bearable in terms of not in this kind of delulu, my mum's still here in ways, but actually I feel I've gotten to know my mum better throughout the years than I had her for the 19 years since she's been died. And that kind of as I have grown, I'm able to maybe question or sit with some of my mum's own maybe behaviours or her own life lessons and how she lived her life. And when I say apply it to me, not like I'm trying to live in her footsteps, but having that dialogue still. We still have that dialogue, that back and forth. I lean on her. I ask her for support. I would say I'm quite a spiritual person, but I do believe that the continuing bonds kind of method and ideology is not strictly applied just to being spiritual or religious. We can all choose to have a relationship with our person should we want to. And it's the difficult part because it is all subjective and it's all our relationship with them. There's no kind of, the 5 stages and all that bollocks, whatever. It is a kind of your relationship with your person. That's a quest that only you alone can go on. But that's what makes it so personable and so sacred. And I think that has been the part where, and just because I say that doesn't mean that the gravity of my mum or Poppy not being here doesn't still, take me out. But I'm like, I can still call upon them, I can still lean on them, I can still be guided by them from whether it was the length, what we experienced in our relationship while they were here, or just knowing them as people, and still understanding that we can have a relationship should we want to. And it's hard to come to terms with it because it's something that's it's active needed. It's not something that just does roll off. It does take ritual. It does take practice and finding it back to the coping mechanisms of like finding stuff that works for you. In grief, there's a lot of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks, and a lot won't, and a lot will. Yeah. But it's got to have the humility to try and do it. To say, all right, I'm going to do it. Absolutely. I'm just going to have a go and see.
Yeah,
exactly.
Literally.
And what would you say in your mother's death and also Poppy's death? What has death taught you about life? Like,
just have fun and just don't care what anyone thinks. Like I know there's so many things, but in terms of I think especially now for me, like now that I work and full time do this in it, you know, there was lots of, I think when I started Grief Gang, thinking of that, there was lots of, gosh, what's everyone going to think about me coming online and talking about grief and death and being open about it? And that probably stuck with me, you know, the caring about what other people thought. And then when I met people and the community started to grow, and I just started meeting just the most phenomenal people who had been, you know, cracked open by grief and were just living their lives. I just thought I think the thing I've learned in so many ways too is that, like, as much as you think everyone kind of cares, they actually don't.
Yeah.
And in a way that's both quite an agony. I think in terms of context of grief too, when you think, you know, as time does move on and people do move on and you maybe don't have the check-ins or whatever, and you can kind of think like, oh, people really don't care, and that's an agony and a grief in itself. But then there's always two sides to a coin, and the work that I do, it is very like balanced in terms of we both look at the night and the day. So in context of that kind of like, oh yeah, like no one cares, or that feeling of no one cares, but there's been like, no one cares. Do what the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
Talk about your grief as much as you want about your person. Like, do that. Like, no one actually really cares. So just do your thing. And that again is a difficult thing. It's a lot of this stuff. It just doesn't just, you know, fall into your lap and you have it. It takes work. It takes like sticking by your guns and doing that. But I just, like this. It's always this cliches that this life is short. I think when I started Grief Gang, and I was still working, there was no way I could have quantified like making it my full-time gig. I just simply didn't know how to, or even if I really wanted to. And then when the opportunity was there and I was like, sod it, let's just give it a go. Like, there's no reward without risk in life. What's the worst that can happen? I've lived through worse. And I've somehow survived it. I think that's another thing too, of that, the information and that you get and give yourself, or is granted to you when you go through losses, is your resilience. And I know that can be a very complex area to talk about, because we get a lot of, oh, you're so strong and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But you can genuinely really surprise yourself at how strong you are. And I think that's quite an overwhelming thing when you are like, I hear from so many people, whoever it is they've lost, and they say, you know, I just can't quite quantify how I'm here and I'm breathing still, but the person I loved isn't. Like, how am I still standing? And I'm like, you have no choice. And I'm like, you have no choice. I'm like, of course there is another choice, but I know that perhaps that's, you know, you don't want to. And I think that realization of that, my gosh, you can be kicked down so much and lose people that you love so dearly, but you can get up and you know, for a while maybe drag your feet through life, but after a while you're like, actually, what's this life got to show me again? And actually like tap back in. That's like human greatness in its most incredible form, and the most amazing people I've ever met, the most loving, kind, successful, formidable, respectful people have probably all been touched by the hand of grief. I can smell it off someone. I can smell it. If I meet someone in a room, more times than most, the rooms that I'm in are somewhat griefy, but sometimes not. I'll be talking with someone and I'll just know, and we'll get talking and I'll go, and they'll say someone's died. And I'll go, I knew it. I'm like, there's just this kind of air. And when I say an air, it's maybe, sometimes it is a confidence. Sometimes it's just like, it's a confidence in some, it is maybe some quite gregarious. I think before, I used to be quite gregarious in my grief. I think I'm a bit more subdued now. Many people might disagree with that. But in terms of, there is just a confidence, I think, in a knowingness about yourself. When you have had to go through grief and you have had to look at yourself hard in the mirror and be like, one, I don't even know who this person is anymore. You kind of get to a point where you're like, I'm all right with me. Like, I've had to really spend a lot of time, maybe money in therapy or whatever, to get comfortable with this version of me. I'm all right if matey boy in the corner doesn't like me.
Fuck matey
I'm
boy.
all right. I'm like, oh, you don't like me, I'm good. Like, I used to not like me, so I don't care if you don't.
From that, the tagline's got to be, Amber can smell grief. That's how it's. I think that's what I took from that.
It's like a cancer.
I think you can. I think I can be in a room and I'm like, go on, who was it? Who was it?
Who died?
£10 on your dad.
Tina, your dad.
Tina, was it? Go on. I think you can do that.
I think what I find really interesting is when you explain about your own grief. For years, I didn't do this. Like, I wouldn't bring up the fact I had a brother, like whether that was I was asked to have a brother or whatever. Like, I wouldn't bring it up. But then just suddenly, like, it's usually in my friendship group. My friends will make dead brother jokes, which I love. Like, it's brilliant. Let's just all take the piss. And then if there's someone in that group that doesn't know that experience, but suddenly their face changes. It either changes because they're like, I don't know what to deal with it. It changes like, this is funny, okay, I can't believe we're doing this. Or it changes because they know what I'm going through. And it happened on New Year's Eve, and I met a guy whose sister died. And I just noticed this immediately when someone made a dead brother joke. I could just tell in the corner of my eye, this person I'd never met before had been through everything that I'd been through. And we got chatting about it, and it was really lovely. So it's nice when you find that community, when you find that gang, like, that group.
Totally. Are you we're quite dark in our sense of thinking about it. We're a bit twisted, it's fair to say. But do you find that kind of laughter is what helps you as well? Or do you think...
Totally.
Yeah, tears and laughter.
Totally. I'd say, I don't think... I'm funny, I'm funny.
Ooh,
but
if you say so yourself.
Again, I told you I'm confident, I'm going to be a bit of a prick. But in terms of, I'd say I'm funny, but I'm not quick-witted, dark humour funny. I can be, so I think in my early years I was, but I always appreciate a good joke. I always
really
do.
Twisted. Ours can get bad. Ours can get...
To the point where it's not really funny anymore.
I
can't lie, I do. Yeah, no, sometimes you do think, fucking hell, that was a lot.
That was a bit dark.
Or in terms of like... For example, my best friend who just got married on this weekend, her mum also died when she was a lot younger. And like sort of, you know, all kind of the wedding admin and stuff over the last few years. Or even, for example, like my brother got married last year to his very long-term partner. And her mum is still alive. And it was just, there was some things like with her mum and, you know, the mother of the bride and all that shit. And I was thinking, you know what? I just saw it and I just thought, that is so long.
Yeah.
And I literally said, it slipped off my tongue one day. I said, you know what? Sometimes having a dead mum is all right. And I was like, because I genuinely thought, gosh, when I get married...
You haven't got that admin.
I thought my mum would be a fucking nose. She'd be an absolute nose. Nightmare. And I just thought, yeah, I'm good for that. I'm all right. And I can't accept it. They were like, oh, and I was like, oh no, like I'm actually being so serious. Like, the thought of my mum, of course, when I get married, I'll be like, oh no, I'm sorry. But I was like, actually, yeah, I'm all right for
Makes
mum.
you feel a little bit
I was
better.
like, that picture just looks long.
Yeah,
I'm all right for
so
that.
fair.
But totally love a bit of dark humour. I know I definitely probably did years of hiding behind it.
Yeah,
and
that's you walk the
it's
line.
a line. And I have a lot of people that I work with, and I'm never ever going to be the one to say to someone like, quit your jokes, let's actually talk.
Yeah.
But they know it in themselves of kind of, I've had some class clowns, and I'm like, it's like when a kid swears and you're like, you can't not laugh. But I'm like, no, let's go a little bit deeper there. Like, that's what's underneath. But I'm like, if it's what gets us through, totally. It's if we don't laugh, we'll cry. Sometimes we do have to cry, but sometimes we do have to just laugh at it. Sometimes you have to laugh at just like how shit life is.
Oh yeah.
Like when my friend Poppy died, I was just like, are you joking me? I was like, are you actually joking me?
Is
like,
someone writing this? Is this a script?
I was like, so my mum dies. I start a community and I start a thing. I meet the most amazing person ever who understands it, and we become best buds, and then she dies. Shut up.
Can't be real.
Shut up. This is not
real.
Not fair. But it's things like that. You have to. I was like, God, I'd cry on the kitchen floor.
Yeah.
You know, the oscillation. If there's a lovely oscillation between the both, I think that for me is my concoction for trying to live a life alongside it.
Oscillation between the both is my concoction.
Write that down.
Whoa, God, we got a wordsmith here. What's going on there?
I love that though. I think it definitely is, isn't it? And I think I'm probably still at the point where I do hide behind dark humour.
Yeah.
I 100%.
don't think it's hiding. You know, I think the word like you're hiding behind, I think it's, you know, it's Gracie, it's kind of, you're no fool to understanding that on yourself. If you're using the word, like hiding, and of like, there'll be a time when you'll go, I don't want to anymore, actually. I actually want to talk about it. And I want to talk about it without the jokes.
Yeah.
That's
terrifying.
Of course it is.
I don't know if I've got to that point. If there's a point where we get to that.
I'll ever get to that point. I'd love to, but I feel like I don't know. I struggle to cry though. I'm very jealous that you can cry.
See, that's an interesting part. So I always say, I get so many people who say as well, they're like, what's wrong with me, I can't cry, or they're just like, I'm not a crying person or something like that, and they think it's really indicative of something, like whether they grieve less for their person or whatever they want to attach to it. Actually, some people just aren't, and that's okay. It's all, different strokes, different folks, but in terms of if it's something that you want to, for some people they're like, I'm good that I don't cry, and they genuinely are. They maybe express in other ways, whether it's through like creative expression or something like singing or something, that's their release. But if it is something that you're like, or you feel like I need a good cry, that's when it's maybe like, okay, let's.
But I can't get to that. Honestly, this is really bad, but I probably cried more when my dog died in December than I did when Laura died.
That's bad.
I think that's bad.
No,
Your dog was great to me.
He wasn't
I
great.
never met Laura, so.
With our family dog, probably is one like linked to your loved ones too.
He'd been through everything.
My dog's coat had so many tears cried into his little coat after Mum, and she was like his baby as well. Yeah. And so, gosh, when he died, I was bedbound for like 5 days.
Yes. Oh, that makes me feel a bit better.
Oh, but my mum, I went back to work 4 days after she died.
Wow.
Yeah, like
the difference in
the
that.
differences. Oh, I was bereft when that little doggy died.
What was the dog's name?
Jasper.
Jasper.
And he was a little white, fluffy, useless thing, but I loved him so much.
What kind of dog?
Little Bichon Frise.
Oh, yeah, you
he was little. He was a very lazy dog, and I loved it. We were perfect pairings.
There's also something, isn't there, with dogs, because often those dogs, they've also been there when your loved one was there too. And like when Frankie died, I was like, God, like Liam was around with Frankie, and then now there's like this other like connection.
Exactly, and I think that's what people that I've met, whether it is pet loss and it's a link to a loved one who was lost, and they're so dumbfounded of like, why? Because I was too. I was like, why am I like bodily grieving for this dog, like more than with my mum? Like, this is mental. But it was that I always say that I think no loss is actually an isolated incident. Like, everything is connected in terms of like, I can't think about my mum without thinking about my friend Poppy, and vice versa. Like, they're interlinked, as we all are as human beings. But like, with our family dog, because like he was her baby and she loved him, but also for what he offered and symbolised after mum. Like, if he wasn't there, he was a thing that made me get up out and every single day. I had to walk him, I had to feed him, I had to look after something, and he gave me a purpose. And so it was kind of, when he was gone, there was this quite a sense of purposelessness, that I kind of, my daily routine was impacted. And it can trigger you, it can take you all the way back to in those early stages. And so it can be really overwhelming when something like, whether it is a loss of a pet or another person, kind of starts bringing up lots of old feelings and thoughts for someone else, and you are like, how the hell are these two in? Like, for me, Mum and Poppy, I was thinking, gosh, why am I having such big mum stuff come up here? They never met. But in terms of, because Poppy had helped me so much in our friendship through the wound of mum, and it was just like, oh God, now both of you aren't here. Like, what on earth? So no losses, I think, are isolated incidents.
And sometimes I find myself almost doing an opposite of that, though. If I'm having a bad day for a reason that's got nothing to do with grief, I then just start blaming it on grief so I can have a cry. I went to the garden centre last week with my parents. So my brother's anniversary is coming up. He would have been 30 this year, and it's coming up to the day he died. And we went to the garden centre. I've been having a bit of a bad couple of weeks, and we were finding some flowers to put by his grave, and I found that whole experience really quite sad. Like, his life had become some flowers, and obviously I was sad about that, but I just needed a bit of cry from the past couple of weeks that had been a bit rubbish. So I just used that moment. I was like, okay, I'm going to be sad, and then I had a little cry, and it helped out loads.
Totally. And sometimes it is that, of kind of just like, life resumes, right? And we have to go through the hardships too. And sometimes it is maybe a using opportunity like an anniversary or something coming up, or just maybe hearing something or being with certain people, to take that opportunity, like whether we feel, and I think that might be too, maybe like going, we've all gone through that. Sometimes it's sometimes giving ourselves the permission to cry about other things doesn't feel as optional, in terms of like, you've had loved ones die, and crying perhaps over the previous few weeks, whether it is like work, friends, partners, whatever the thing is, feels insignificant. For example, as well, I remember when I was made redundant from my airport job end of 2020. And that was tough. Like, I loved that job and it was great, and I had such great community there. And it was a great sadness, but I didn't permit myself to cry because I was like, I've watched my mum die.
Yeah.
Why am I going to cry over this spilt milk? But that's like, just because we've gone through extremely hard losses doesn't mean that when other life things get us down that we can't have that same release. But it's that permission piece to give us that we feel like, sometimes our own like expectations on ourselves are the ones that keep us like locked down and think, actually no, like I've had a really fucking tough couple of weeks and my brother's anniversary is coming up, like it's all just a bit much right now. It's all just a bit much right now. Let me just cry this out.
Let me have a little
I
cry.
love a cry. So my head's thumping, I'm like, God, I feel
Stop
so
rubbing
much
it in,
better.
guys. Yeah, honestly.
It's great because you also
I
get the
see
sympathy, and I
Gracie.
love the sympathy.
Yeah.
But only sometimes I don't, but a lot of the time. Yeah, go on, give me a
I
pat
do
on the
quite
shoulder.
like it. It's weird though, the things that sort of tether you to that person. I was just thinking then when you were speaking, the most random thing that recently got me was I took my phone to Apple to get, other phones are available, to get its no free advertising here,
We're
guys.
not on the BBC here. What's-
I took my phone to the phone shop to get a new battery put in, right? And it was just a simple thing, needed a new battery, and went back to go and pick it up, and they were like, oh, for whatever reason, your phone broke while we were doing it, or there was an issue with it. So we went, so we've got you a new phone. And I was like, and the person I was with was like, oh, that's amazing, you got a new phone, that's great. And I was like, no.
What does that mean?
I bought that phone before Laura was really, well, while she was quite poorly, and she touched that phone. And that camera had taken pictures of her. And and the person I was with is like, no, come on, you've got a new phone. Like, that's, and I was like, no.
No, you don't get it.
And the Apple guy was like, other phones are available. The Apple guy was going, you've got a new phone, and like, why are you, but being really, and I was like, no, you don't get it.
I think I don't like
why
the new
that's-
phone. I'd be like, oh, I have that. Go on.
Brody,
I
it's
do
Make
get
it a model
you.
more.
Honestly, it's like my car. I've got a great little car, but if I have to replace that car, it won't be the car. It's the fact she sat in that passenger seat.
Totally.
She drove that car.
Touchstones to your
It's weird,
memories.
isn't it? Like and I feel like explaining that to somebody who hasn't lost somebody would be like, dude, get a grip. You've got all these pictures. You've got a whole bedroom full of stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that so deep?
No,
But
I get it. I
is.
totally understand it, Gracie.
weird, isn't
And
it?
it's hard. It's kind of these experiences that maybe when like, it's particularly with possessions, whether it is, like we lose them or we dispose of them or something in a situation like that, where for me, I have, with my mum, I have a fair few items. A lot of them are in our kind of family home. My friend Poppy, I've actually, as of recently, about end of April, Poppy was very stylish, and we had like a kind of pop-up clothes thing where basically her mum and her husband basically opened up her wardrobe, and we shopped her wardrobe and got to take loads of items of her clothes. And so having those possessions are absolutely, otherworldly.
Yeah.
But there's something of it where it's like I try not to place too much value on those items for things like that, because I went through the experience once before with a phone. Actually, it's bloody fucking technology, isn't it?
Apple.
And it bloody was. It was something like my iCloud storage was getting a little bit big, blah 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 blah, and just one day it wiped. Not everything, but a good substantial amount of history.
That's the thing that gives me nightmares.
And I remember literally, I was like, oh my God. And I've still got some texts with my mum, but like a good, from about early 2020, Jan 2020, before that, everything gone. So all these years and kind of these pictures, there's obviously things like in other places like Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But that was a grief in itself.
Oh my God,
I
I
remember
bet.
literally going like, oh wow. But I was actually, at that time, quite surprised of how I kind of came back from it, because I was like, this is a lesson for you here of that, almost back to that continuing bonds thing again.
Yeah.
I think that was maybe in a way some part of the chain of me starting that, in terms of I was like, oh, I can't put that much weight on an item because I can just be gone. I need to find a way to connect and still feel in touch with my mum that is completely accessible all day, every day within me.
Yeah.
I can't rely. And that was, I think, a really big, trust me now though, I back up everything.
Oh, I bet.
Back up
Yeah, I
everything.
bet. That
I
would
was like,
teach you.
yeah.
I need to get to that point because I'm anything that honestly I'm really bad because Laura's room is virtually still exactly the same. And if my dad comes in and moves something to
Yeah,
put
you
more
know.
paper, I am raging because I'm like, even touching her clothes, I'm like, she was the last person that touched that. How dare you touch that when now I can't ever get that back?
Wanna
And I need to
stop
stop that because
Yeah.
one day, Callum's like, you need to get over that.
I think you don't, but like I think over time
You'll find your process.
that there will be a moment where that that does
I don't
naturally
know.
stop.
I'm really bad with that.
I think that like, yeah, as I can say this, Gracie, to you as a friend, there'll be different moments and different times, won't there? But I think if you go through your whole life only ever driving one car,
it's
never
so true.
touching the clothes that sit in a wardrobe,
Yeah.
or that isn't good. That
Oh, no, it's
won't,
not.
But,
It's not healthy,
But
is
also,
it?
you don't need to rush that right
Yeah.
now. That moment will come.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't worry about it right now.
Yeah, I think you
I do
perfectly hit
worry.
it there, Callum.
I do
Sort of,
worry about
you can
that.
feel kind of the worry in you
Yeah.
of that. But of note, there will be a time for you, Gracie, of where kind of you'll maybe understand or find your own groove of, oh, I perhaps don't need to keep the car to feel close to her.
Just stop being a fucking idiot, Grace.
No, really, that's what it is,
Or
isn't
just
it?
I'm joking. I'm joking.
No,
I'm
it's so
joking.
true. It's
No,
so
I've
true.
had so many moments like this. Like,
Yeah,
like,
no, I love it.
there
The
were-
fact that
That
the
you
room
can
is still the
take
same,
her
like,
wherever you go.
Yeah.
In the world, what you do, you don't need specifically a car or
there.
a thing. I know, I know it sounds, but in terms of, because I understand the whole thing being of like, oh, you don't need this, like they're always in your heart, and it's like that's not enough. But in terms of like,
Yeah.
you can. Like it does go back to, for me, that continuing bond thing of like, it's not just, oh, she lives in my heart and they live in my soul. In terms of, I think that my mum and my friend Poppy, they're in the coding of me. Like I am who I am
like
because
that.
of them, and that whatever that I do, whatever I experience, if it is getting a new car,
Yeah.
in a way, actually, they're experiencing the new car. I sit in my car all the time, and I'd sit there and chat with Poppy in the car,
That's really
and I'd just be
sweet.
like, oh my God, yeah. And just like that, whatever I do, however I do, I can take them with me.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
like
And I
that.
don't need a possession or an item too, but in terms of our relationship is still so vibrant and active. And maybe that's the quest, Gracie, of kind of
Yeah.
what is that relationship between you and your sister still?
I feel like we're getting a therapy session.
I
Yeah, I'm
do.
loving this. God, Grief Gang could just come here all the time. We're coming towards the end of our chat, but we're asking everyone a few of the same questions. So how has grief changed you?
Such a great question.
Such a hard question, that,
It
isn't it?
is.
But it can be anything. It can be as small as...
Grief has made me a better person.
Yeah.
It really has. I felt like I was saying earlier, in terms of if I didn't go through those really painful years, like being at rock bottom, like you think rock bottom's there, rock bottom has a cellar, like
Oh, yeah.
it's got a basement,
one below
I
that,
went,
I
and I
think.
went
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I was there, and I think that was where I had to really look at myself in the mirror and be like, I think it was the realization of, oh, this grief isn't going anywhere. This is with me for the rest of my life. And instead of trying to run away from it, I was like, we've got to find a way to live with each other. And in really what that meant was like, I've got to find a way to live with me, and a way to like me again. And not only that, love me again. And I think, yeah, the journey of grief and Grief Gang and all of that, but I think just grief as a whole, of being quite literally stripped bare and feeling like having to start again, and perhaps multiple times over, like for many people with multiple losses, my gosh, you really get to know yourself and what does and doesn't work for you, or you do and don't like about yourself. And I think grief has led me to be one of the most favourite versions of myself.
Lovely.
And a version of myself that I respect the most. I think back to previous versions where I think I didn't really respect myself in so many ways. And I think, yeah, grief has cracked me wide open in both its horror and pain, but in terms of, it's never made me feel so alive, in terms of being like, oh, this is all we have just right now. Like genuinely, not to think too far ahead or too far behind, just like what we have now is so precious. And it's hard when life whips you up and takes you in, but that kind of always brings back to me, like we just have the here and now.
It's beautiful. I really like that.
It's lovely.
If you were to give me one thing that you wish people knew about your mum, whether it's a daft thing, whether it's something really sincere, what would it be?
Oh, one thing like about her as a person, or just maybe
Whatever. What was a favourite food?
oh, everything we ate, everything in that household. That's the thing. I was thinking
Was she a good cook?
she wasn't like, you know, Michelin, but she would do proper homely staples. Yeah. Like just a random one. She loved to do yellow peppers and sweet potato, just like in the grill under.
That's nice.
Just stunning, just the
Yeah,
sweetness
yeah.
of them. But and when I have them now, I think, gosh, yeah. I'd say about my mum, I think like, the one thing I say what she taught me, and kind of when I think of her and what she stood for, and what a lot of people do, is that my mum was, you know, a person of grit, of determination. But my mum was also, she was community personified. And I genuinely think that I have had the most phenomenal teacher and what it means to be part of a community, or potentially facilitate and guide and support a community. And not in the sense of my mum did something similar to me, but in terms of our house was like the community hub. But it was her friends, my friends, my brother's friends. Our door was always open. And mum always kind of, you know, we lived in a tiny, tiny little home, but it didn't matter. She was just like, you know, the more the merrier. There was always an extra plate. There was always an extra mug for someone. Joy was having a table full of your loved ones around that. Lovely. And that's what's taught me about life. You know, there's no fun in doing it on your own. Life is so much more fun in community, whether it is your friends, your family, or people at large in your community, in your workplaces, in your social circles, whatever it is. Like, be part of your community, give to your community, and your community will give back to you. And it's just a much more sweeter way to live life.
That's brilliant.
That's so lovely.
I love that.
I like that.
I now just want a table full of people.
No,
yeah,
your mum
I love
like
it.
I'm going to go back and have my microwave meal.
Cry.
I hate eating alone. I love something more, just like a bustling table.
Yeah.
Or even when I say like table, I even mean that, you know, actual physically, but also metaphorically too. Like the table of your life, in terms of just the more people, the merrier. Not, you know, the people who are close, but just like get out and meet. Like even like today, like I was saying in the beginning of, I felt a bit hermity. I was maybe going to do it virtually. I thought, no, I want to come out and meet Callum and Gracie and have at the virtual table of our life and have this experience, like getting out there and keeping your heart and your eyes wide open. I think she definitely taught us that.
And we usually ask people what advice would they give to someone who is in their shoes when they were younger.
But check out the Instagram, because it's all there, really.
I always find that one just so hard.
It is.
Because there's so much.
But even if it's something dead simple.
I would almost just say, kind of put your hand out there and it will be grabbed, in terms of, I think so many people think they reach out for help, it's not going to be there, but that it actually is. And that what if you know what you give into a community is what you'll get back. And kind of, I think community is something that I think in our modern day and age a lot of people assume it's now just falls into your lap.
Yeah.
But actually, no, to be part of a community, you have to give to it as well. But knowing that, my gosh, it is out there for you, and to just not suffer in silence at all.
Well, Amber, thank you so much. And to anyone who's been listening to this and enjoying it, and you want even more wisdom, words of encouragement, just to feel part of a community or a gang, you should definitely look up the Grief Gang.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So
You're
much,
both
Amber.
stars. Thank you.
No, you're the real star. You're the sun if we're stars.
You're
Grief
great.
guru, you. Honestly, I feel therapist.
The grief queen, the grief guru.
Honestly, it's stuff like I was saying earlier, of just being like, I still can't quantify. I'm just like, no, I still think just like my dad and my brother maybe listen, or my friends listen to the podcast. But I like that though.
Yeah.
I like that though. I
That
don't
way to think about it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I just think, But no, thank you so much
No,
for being
thank
absolute
you.
stars.
We're so incredibly grateful for all of your support and for you listening, and we hope this may have helped you or even just given you a laugh. That's what we're here for.
We'd also like to say a massive thank you to ACT, an independent charity of the Ardonna Group, for supporting the making of this podcast.
Absolute legends.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, guys. Please tell your friends, your family, maybe even your dead relatives about our podcast, and subscribe to the Dead Sibling Society wherever you get your podcasts, so you're the first to know when a new episode drops.
Please have a read of the show notes below and follow us on social media. And if you'd like to get in touch with us to tell us you hate us, you love us, or you just want us to shut up, please DM us or drop us an email.
Oh, don't tell us to shut up. That made me feel sad. But thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.